So welcome everybody. Huge thanks to Zarah for coming back to the Turnpike. Zarah was here 10 years ago.
Did anybody see that show?
2010, I mean, 12 years ago.
Yeah, 12 years ago.
In a two-person show with Halima Cassell, Halima's sculptures and Zarah's paintings. And yeah, welcome back.
Thank you.
With a completely different kind of exhibition.
Yeah.
I think everyone's had a chance to kind of have a look and get a feel for the show and how your kind of practice has developed from 2005 to 2022, which is the period that this exhibition covers. Do you want to tell us, or do you want to introduce the exhibition and tell us some of the key themes, influences, milestones that this exhibition represents?
Yeah, so I'm born here in the Northwest, grew up in, I don't know if you know it, Macclesfield, Cheshire, and I'm the daughter of Pakistani, second generation. My granddad came here in 1964, and my dad came here when he was 11. And my dad worked in the silk industry in Macclesfield. My mum did as well. And, you know, I loved art. I always loved art, and I loved painting. It was my favourite lesson at school, and it was my favourite lesson when I was in primary school. And I really wanted to do an art degree, but my mum and dad didn't want me to do an art degree because they said, you're going to be really poor. And they said, you're never going to have any money, and you can do it as a hobby, and we know you like it, but go and do law or medicine or something proper. So I wasn't that keen on medicine, cutting people up. So, and I wasn't that keen on law either, actually. It sounded quite boring. But my mum and dad kind of steered me towards a proper academic degree. So I did my first degree in Manchester in English and history, and then started working at the BBC. But I wanted to do my work, I wanted to do my art.
There was another element of our online conversation which we had, which I'm hoping I will get round to editing and produce a kind of catalogue piece, if you like, to accompany the show. It's going to take a while because it was such a wide-ranging, interesting kind of dialogue, or three of us. There was a key, one of the key points, if you like, was you talking about your experience 21 years ago when you were working at the BBC and 9/11 happened. Yeah. And, you know, that's an important story that's personal to you to tell, because that has impacted upon your work as an artist and your identity as a Muslim artist. Yeah. Do you want to kind of tell that?
Well, I was in the newsroom in Manchester, in Current Affairs, when 9/11 happened, and I was in the newsroom because I was working on a series of documentaries about the riots that had happened that summer in Bradford, Burnley, and Oldham, and I was working on documentaries for News and Current Affairs on what had happened and why. And I was sitting there, and I was just sitting there at my desk minding my own business. And everybody just went crazy and they said, look, something really big's happening. And everyone went to sit around. But at that time, I was a junior. I was not even a junior researcher. I was a nobody sitting there. And everybody had ignored me up to that point, really. And, you know, the newsroom was a really busy, fast-paced kind of place. And everybody went to sit in front of the news screens. And they have wires, you know, the wires started coming in, something's happening in America, something. And at that time, at the very beginning, they thought it was an accident. And they thought a plane had accidentally hit one of these towers. And I was there, and I think I was the only Muslim there in the whole room. And there was about 400, it's a big newsroom, 400 people. And then it slowly dawns upon you, and then everyone starts looking at you, and then going back every day. I remember in the morning, there used to be like 15 people around my desk asking me questions like, what's this? What's Afghanistan? Who's Maududi? What's Deobandism? What's this? What's this? And I'm like, why would I don't know. I'm just a Muslim. It's like asking a Christian person, who's Thomas More? And why did the Reformation happen? And, you know, it's like, I'm just an ordinary human being who happens to have this religion, and I can't explain to you why this has happened, but I think there was a change at that time after that happened, and there was a sensitivity, and of course it was an atrocity, it was terrible, but I didn't have anything to do with it. It was nothing, you know, I was a kid growing up in the northwest of England. Whatever they were doing and whatever those bombers, what their motivation was, and Osama bin Laden and the Saudi Arabians, it didn't, other than the fact that we share the religion, but I had completely no sympathy with their cause, or, you know, but the assumptions that were made about me and who I was and what I represented were quite harsh. And, you know, I had, you know, all sorts of racist incidents and people saying to me, "You've got a bomb in your bag," and, you know, and then I think it made me think, and it made me research. And I think that was one of the reasons why I wanted to move to London to do the MA in Islamic art, because I thought, well, here's this thing that's being thrown at me, and here's this culture that's being under attack. But it's so much bigger and broader than one narrow political thing. And that was where I really think I made that decision to think, I want to know more. And, you know, yeah, I think that was, it was, and I think that's when the world changed. If you were of my generation growing up, that you had to decide, people used to say to, are you in or are you out? And it's like, well, what does that mean? Are you in or are you out? Are you for us or are you against us? And I've never been against you. This is my country. I love this country. And I'm kind of, and you know, within that, I accept that this country is not perfect. I'm not, you know, but if you criticize anything, why does it mean that you're not patriotic or loyal? Why can't you have multiple views? Why can't you be a person that loves this country, loves all the best that's come out of this country, but also doesn't like the way we treat poor people, maybe? Or, you know, so, but I felt that so much of that was being questioned, and questioned unfairly. And I think it was that impetus to think, you know what, I can probably do, I felt like I could do more good, I could do better in the world than sit there and be a journalist at the BBC and go off and do something that I felt that my heart resonated with. So if you look in the archive, there's fabrics with pomegranates, with peacocks, with Indian flowers on them, because they were using these sources from Kashmir, these designs, to inform their own design practice. In the same way that William Morris did. If you look at William Morris's designs, you can see the influence of Islamic carpets, of Islamic design. And it's this kind of crossover. And for me, what's really interesting is that almost every single town in this country, every single bit of this country connects to empire in some way or another, although we've kind of forgotten that a bit. But there are these tentacles of connection. And then my granddad came from Kashmir to Macclesfield in 1964 to work. So the circle, you know, it comes full circle that, you know, industrialists in the Victorian times, 100 years ago, were going to Kashmir to get inspiration, ideas and designs. And then after partition, after the Second World War, people from Kashmir came to live in Macclesfield, you know. And my dad went to Macclesfield School of Art for a year. And I grew up there. And the building that houses the Macclesfield School of Art used to be the library, and I used to go there. But I didn't know that there was a connection between my country people, my heritage, my culture, and Macclesfield. There's a real tight connection. And that's not been recognized. It wasn't in the museum. I had to do some research, had to find out, had to ask, had to look in the archive. And I think if you dig a little bit, you find all these really amazing connections. And I think, so the making of when the Barnaby Festival asked me to come back to Macclesfield, I wanted to retell that story. And I wanted to say, look, Macclesfield's had a connection to Kashmir for over 150 years. But we don't know about it, and there's nothing in the museum about that, and that connection's not been acknowledged. And so it was really nice. And Joshua and I met, and I wanted to do something that had, because projection is quite flat, and with invisible threads, I wanted to do something that was more 3D and have, so each light box has got about, that's why it's so hard to install. Each light box, there's 54 light boxes, and each light box has got about, I think, 20 LEDs in it, and then a separate LED in the middle. So it's a lot of wiring, if anybody knows about that kind of thing. And all of those are connected to a laptop and a computer, and there's a program that runs an algorithm that chooses how the colors come in and come out through 4 or 5 different sequences of colors, which is similar to the way that we design the colors in the animation. So there is that crossover. So yeah, that's how that came about. And I think it's you can feel it connects to the projections, but it's its own piece. It has its own feel about it, and it's quite different to the animations, I think.
And there are visual connections, aren't there, in terms of the shapes, the patterns, with the silk industry.
Yeah.
Do you want to just describe the connections that there are visually in the piece?
Well, the pattern those little squares, I took that from one of the patterns that I saw in the archive, and I thought that, and then that's a geometric Islamic design that came from Kashmir, that came through Macclesfield, that came through me, and it's just lovely in a way to see all these connections. In the history books, it's all there, but it's just opening it up and having an open mind to seeing what's there. But I think that a lot of that connection with empire is largely forgotten. There's museums up and down this country that have got objects from Africa and India and Pakistan and China, and people don't realize how much there was a connection between. I mean, a lot of people went out from this country to parts of the empire because it was an adventure. It was exciting. Let's go, let's see what's going on, and you could make your fortune. You could go out there and become a soldier, and and a lot of money.
From my point of view, I think what you've brought to Lee is something very, very beautiful.
Thank you.
And again, we were chatting last night with people, and talking about that idea in which your work opens up a place for people to find their own ideas, spirituality, feelings, rather than closing down.
Okay.
So rather than your work illustrating a particular thing or aspect of Islamic culture, actually what art does is open things up and allows people in to converse. And I think that's one of the strengths of art in general, but this show in particular.
Well, I think, if you go back to Pythagoras, and maths is not no culture has a monopoly on maths or geometry or anything. And I think the Muslim culture and civilization took geometry and took it to a very, 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 very fine level because of the prohibition of drawing humans and animals in sacred context, so that the geometry was really perfected, or really they spent a lot of time on the maths. But I think there's a lot of universality, and I feel like I'm not going around proselytizing that you must be this or do this. It's something that I like. I like numbers, I like geometry, I like shapes. But in my belief system, I feel that there's a lot more commonality than difference. And I think there's a lot of universality in the human experience of being alive, And I think art is something that can show that. I mean, you can walk into a beautiful church and you can feel something, and that's something that all humans have, whether you're religious or you're not religious, or whether you believe or not. Or you can look at the Taj Mahal or go into the Blue Mosque in Istanbul and think, this is a magnificent piece of architecture, and be moved by that. Or you can go into an art gallery and look at artwork, or you can go to Greece or whatever. I think that's where art can cover those grey areas, where the commonality of human experiences, where we're similar and not different. And I think that's where the power is. And that's where I think I'd like to be, and like to bring people to that, rather than thinking, well, how are we different? Because that's just, it ends up in tears, doesn't it? It's not.
So you've had a busy year.
Very busy, yeah.
And
very busy, yeah.
When I approached you to bring this exhibition together, I didn't know that you'd had an exhibition in Rugby, and there was a show about to open in Oldham, and a subsequent one in Southport. Yeah. And then you've been on TV, and you've been on billboards in Piccadilly Circus.
Yeah, that was great. That was really good.
And you'll be having a huge projection as part of our Women's Light Night Festival.
That's amazing,
yeah. So it's been a busy year. What's next?
Oh, goodness, I'm going to have a rest. What's happening next? I can't even think. I'm going to finish this, and then I'm going to go home and sleep for a bit. I'm doing a light projection in Riyadh for the Noor Festival, which is it's one of the biggest light festivals in the world, 300 outdoor artworks. And then I'm doing something for the Abu Dhabi Art Fair, and then possibly something in India in New Year. So, fantastic. Yeah, and also not doing anything for a bit as well. I think it's nice to have a rest, isn't it?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm glad your voice held up.
Yes, so
Any questions from anyone? We can do this a bit like question time. If you put your hand up, I'll point to you. Yeah.
When you were doing your master's degree, were you the only female artist or were female artists in the minority?
No, I think it was about 50-50. Because the MA didn't just do geometric art, it did all the Islamic arts. So there was arabesques, do you know when they do the flower designs? There was calligraphy, there was stone carving, and there was miniature painting. So a lot of the women on the course specialized in illumination and miniature painting. In geometry, I was the only one really that was interested in the geometry and the mathematics. I would say on the course, everybody else that did the geometry was male. But I think that's changing now. And I think recently, because the course is still going, obviously, and there's more graduates every year. So I think there's a lot of women doing geometry now. But when I did it, I think that women on the course, I think it was 50-50, but a lot of the women on the course were more interested in miniature painting and illumination and things. And miniature painting, again, is, oh my God, it's so hard. It's a really difficult thing to master. But yeah, and it was quite a small course. I think there was only about 9 or 10 people on the course. So it was quite intense.
When was like the time period that you started exploring like the digital element to your work?
The first one was in 2005. I graduated in 2004, so this one was quite early on. Yeah. And then the piece there's 2019, the breath piece. The one in the middle room, that's the most complicated one in terms of geometric, because it's got 7 different layers and 7 different sequences and 7 different color pathways. And so it's quite complicated. But yeah, you just do it as it, I mean, you don't know what's coming around the corner, so you just do what you're asked to do, really.
And when you were working in the newsroom, was after 9/11, did the conflict of who you were and what the media was saying about people like yourself, was that a really big push to you?
I think I knew then it wasn't the career for me. I mean, I did like working in journalism because you get to meet lots of people and you get to go out there, and it is quite interesting from that point of view. But I think you have a moment where you think, it's not what I want to do. It wasn't for me. So I did carry on working for like another couple of years after that because, you need to work and you need to pay your bills and stuff. And even after my MA, I did work in television for a bit, but my heart was doing my work and painting and my art. So that's what won out, really.
Yeah.
It's not really a question, but I found it very fascinating you explaining further about your work, what you've done, the geometry and all that. I think it certainly helps us as individuals to look at things that we would not have seen otherwise. So just wanted to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wonder whether you can say a bit more about the collaborations, how they started,
Yeah.
the actual practice of collaborating with a program there, the kind of space that you're in with them. Is it done remotely? You kind of sharing the same screen, iteratively kind of,
Yeah. Cris and I get on really well. So when I finished my MA, I was living in Hackney, Tower Hamlets, and then I moved to where I live now, and there was a festival, an arts festival happening called the E17 Art Trail, and I went along to that festival, and then that's where I met Cris, and we just had a chat, and I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I'm a computer programmer. I'm just giving out leaflets for the festival," because his wife was actually the person that was organizing the festival. And I said to him, well, I'd really like, there's something that I wanted to do was animate a geometric design. Would that be something that you're interested in? And he said, yeah, okay, let's meet up for a coffee. Met up for a coffee, I brought my designs, and we just talked about, well, what would be the best way of doing this? Because he knows lots of different languages. He knows Python, and he said, well, let's do this in Flash, because you can draw in Flash, and it's an easy one to start with. And I said, look, I want to pay you. I don't want to ask you to do this work for free. And computer programmers do get a lot of money. It's quite well paid. So I applied to the Arts Council, and at the same time, I got asked to do an exhibition at Bradford. So I said, let's do this animation, and if it looks good and if it works, then we can show it for the exhibition. So for the first animation, I would say we worked together every day for about 4 or 5 hours in the same office. But now we've been working together for like 17 years. We do a lot on the phone. We do a lot on WhatsApp. We're on the computer both at the same time, and we're messaging forward and back because we know each other so well that we've been working together and we've been friends for such a long time. I think it works quite well, and neither of us get offended about what the other says. And I think if you work in collaboration with someone, you've got to be able to, and that's a good friend as well. A good friend will say to you, I don't think this is working, or I don't think it looks good, or I think maybe we should start again. And you have to be able to take that and listen, because a lot of the work that you do by yourself, and it's your own, you could be a little dictator. You can do what you want, but when you work with someone, I think it is more collaborative, and you have to be able to listen and communicate quite well. And then with Joshua, I've only done one project with Joshua, but we got on really well. And I think I was quite clear about what I wanted to do. I think at the outset, if you know what the outcomes are, and it's easier to work with someone. But with Cris, I think we kind of intuitively know each other quite well now. So, and it's good to build a relationship over time, I think, And there's always saying, oh, Zarah, we can't do that. That's really hard. Oh, that's too complicated. Or that takes too much time. I'm like, no, let's do it. So, yeah.
With Invisible Threads, Josh felt like the curator in the sense of he cares for this work.
Yeah, he really cares.
And he has to go where
and
the work goes
it.
and install it because it's so complex, and it's his, piece as well as yours. The thing gets delivered in crates, and then Josh spends
hours cleaning each one, doesn't he?
Cleaning things and then putting it all together, and it's a kind of beautiful
thing
to witness.
Isn't he? Yeah.
It is, and the way he works is like the piece itself. It's this slow, methodical.
Yeah, he's very methodical.
Beautifully flowing kind of experience. So I think, Josh has travelled to everywhere where that piece has been installed. So it as a collaborator, he's very hands-on now in a slightly different way to Cris.
He's really happy that he's seen all the parts of because he's from America. He's from Pittsburgh, so he's like, oh, because of you, Zarah, I've seen all of the UK.
And thanks again to Zarah.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you.